morning, good afternoon, good evening. The issue of people should not comment and leave Chamisa alone to conduct his political activities continues. I dismiss the issue with the contempt it rightly deserves. To me, this is just another variation on Chamisa should not be held to account. Chamisa is a public figure. The people of Zimbabwe have risked their lives, livelihoods, and limbs to elect him and his colleagues these last 25 years for a very specific purpose, to implement the democratic reforms necessary to stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections. They failed to do so. That is a fact. And not only that, they've been conning people to participate in flawed elections to give ZANU-PF legitimacy and perpetuate the dictatorship. To say we should not hold him to account is ridiculous. Here is a public official who has betrayed the trust of the people. Just because the electorate are ignorant, and in this case here, clearly they are, because even in 25 years, the penny hasn't dropped to some of them to ask the question, why has MDC CCC failed to implement any reforms? And even after the 2023 elections, when he clearly lied to them to con them to participate in those elections, some people still do not have the common sense to admit that he lied and to follow it up. This is such an important point, that to say, well, tough luck to those people who were conned, is not good enough. Because as much as, yes, the individuals who were conned is a problem, we cannot also deny the reality that we all suffer as a consequence of that. So it is important that we should address that issue. Ben, what do you think?
Good day to you and good day to our viewers. Thank you for joining us. One of the fundamental requirements for democracy to work or to exist is for citizens to be able to hold those who aspire and are actually in public office accountable for their actions and whatever they say and whatever they promise. You cannot wish Zimbabwe to be a democracy when you do not want to work towards being a democratic country. By demanding accountability, you are keeping the politician or leadership on their toes. You are pushing them to deliver more. You are pushing them to keep their promises. But unfortunately, in Zimbabwe, we suffer from the Mozambique syndrome, where instead of us demanding accountability, we will protect and we will guard our leaders and make them appear as if they are demigods. They do no wrong. And even if it is clear as daylight that they have done something wrong, we will still defend them. And this is why you find it has taken us so long to get out of this mess. We are stuck in, our Mozambique syndrome, where we will stifle debate. We will call each other names. It's funny how you find the ZANU PF guys will call you, Vatengesi, sellouts, puppets of the West. And then you go on the opposite side, the opposition. They will call you Varakashi, and they have similar traits. They do not want their leaders questioned or being held accountable. This is why we are in this mess. We will never achieve our goal at this rate.
I totally agree there. I think I would like to underline this problem that it's not just a matter of let's leave Chamisa to do his own political business, because by extension we would also then be compelled to say we should leave ZANU-PF to conduct its own business, which is ridiculous. They are leaders and they should be held to account. But the other issue here, that some of the people who are pushing that these leaders should not be held to account, is the electorate themselves. And of course, leaders from both parties are taking full advantage of that problem, that weakness by the electorate. And in this particular case, just because the voters have got this personality cult mentality, we should say we should abandon them and let them be abused and misused and exploited by the ruling elite from both parties. And more significantly, the abuse of these people also means that we, the rest of the population, is being dragged deeper and deeper into this hell on earth. I think it is important to understand how corruption in Zimbabwe started and how this ruling elite in Zimbabwe, this mentality of the ruling elite being special, started. And I would like to play this video by Dr. Simba Makoni, where he does explain how this culture came about.
I recall very clearly that when we came into office in 1980, we inherited Ian Smith's systems. And Ian Smith's ministers drove Peugeot 504s. They drove themselves from home to work in their Land Rovers and all in kinds. Most of them were farmers. They parked their Land Rover and then they used the government vehicle when they were at work with a chauffeur. When they finished at night, they packed them and they took theirs to go home. Within the month of our coming into office, Prime Minister Mugabe then directed that every minister be issued with an E-class Mercedes-Benz. And the Peugeot 504s were retired to permanent secretaries, and the deputy ministers who then took over. We can also look at many other things, small they may appear, at the time. Let me hazard that even at that point, Enos Nkala was our Minister of Finance. I don't think we knew what budget we inherited from Ian Smith when the decision was taken to buy those E-class fleets for the ministers. So the material affection for material themes has always been with us. And the differentiation also, even going back into the camps, Shefu, my comrades Makada were not the same. So much so that even today, when the so-called Minister for Presidential Affairs or Provincial Governor, as they were, goes to Bubi or Binga, they will be served separately and differently from the other people. The avarice grew as we began to exploit the opportunities of office. When I was in the government, the minister was allocated one vehicle that they kept, which was the sedan they used in town. If you needed to go off-road, then your ministry hired off-road vehicles from the CMED, and you were charged for it. Now a minister will have an average of 4 vehicles in his forecourt, all at government's expense.
So the leadership modeled the wrong kind of behavior, and that kind of behavior permeated all across our society. Our CEOs, like you're saying, heads of parastatals and so forth, modeled from the top.
Indeed. Indeed. I made a passing reference that we have CEOs who will buy themselves a luxury car when they can't pay wages at the end of the week or end of the month.
This point, most people sometimes fail to appreciate it. When the GNU was formed in 2008, 2009, Mugabe used the same dirty trick, bribed Morgan Tsvangirai and his colleagues with the trappings of high office, and they forgot about the reforms. They completely failed to implement even one token reform. And therefore, then for anyone to be saying now, oh no, let's leave Chamisa. Let's not hold him to account. Let him continue with his own political activities. It's ridiculous. What Chamisa and the ZANU-PF thugs have been doing is no different. The leadership from the both parties have taken advantage of the people's ignorance and exploited it for their own selfish ends. This is why we are in this mess. And part of the educating the electorate means they've got to understand what has gone wrong, why we need to change the system, why they themselves need to break away from this personality cult mentality. Why the same people who are saying, oh, leave Chamisa alone, if you were to ask them, did Chamisa lie in 2023? Be rest assured, they will not want to admit it. They will not want to admit it. Why? Because of that personality cult mentality. If you cannot even admit something that is so blatantly clear and obvious, how are you going to understand the more intricate and complex issues as we go forward that you need, as the electorate, you need to make decision on? I think this issue of the people themselves understanding that the electorate must be educated if they're ever going to carry out their duty, their secret duty of holding the leaders to account is important. To try to move on without that being made abundantly clear and understood by all is tantamount to what we have seen in our education system, particularly at those schools, government-run schools, Ma'apato, where the children have not learned the lessons of grade 1, but at the end of the year, they'll be moved on to grade 2. And so we end up with this situation where end of the academic year, the grade 7 results, Form 2 results, Form 4 results at some of these government-run rural schools are so poor that most schools ever have a pass rate of more than 3%. And yet, even if you failed your grade 7 exam, you'll find yourself in Form 1. Failed your Form 2 results, you find yourself in Form 2, in Form 3, and so on. This culture of pushing on before you understood anything is what has resulted in a situation where some people are doing their O level, and yet they can hardly read and write. The politics of any nation, if we want a democratic Zimbabwe, one of the fundamental realities we have to accept is that leaders must be held to account. The electorate themselves must understand that. And they are the ones who must insist on it. To suggest somehow that we can leave the leaders off the hook is ridiculous. In this case here, leaving Mnangagwa off the hook is what is leading to this headline. It's no longer 2030. Now it's 2033. Mnangagwa rigged the 2018 elections. We left him to his own devices. He went on to rig the 2023 elections. And now he is proposing that he should be allowed to stay on in power until 2030. Cancel the elections in 2028. And his minister, Garwe, there, is already talking of, we want him to stay on until 2033. This circus will carry on. If you seriously think we can have a democratic nation without holding leaders to account, then all I can say is you are naive. Ben, do you want to give your closing remarks?
And I would want to say, our failure to hold those that are in public office or aspire for public office, has led us into this mess. There is no accountability to anybody. Hence, you find there's no traceability of whatever is going on. And, funny enough, when you really look closely, that you find out that ZANU and Triple C, MDC, members of parliament or ministers or whatever, they have similar traits. I mean, recently, just before parliament was dissolved going into the 2023 elections, they were given $40,000 loans. Nobody refused those loans, despite knowing that the country is suffering. And despite knowing that, who gives somebody a loan when you are out of a job next week? They all took up those, those monies. They come back, they ask you to vote, knowing fully well that ZANU-PF was going to rig the elections and nothing meaningful was going to come out of the elections. And they were, they went into office. They took up the seats in parliament. Today, what are they doing? Both ZANU-PF and MDC leaders in parliament, they no longer want one car. They now want 2 cars each. Where's the difference between to say, we went to parliament to try and control, ZANU-PF, when you're also taking from the suffering people who, by the way, they don't even have proper medical care, who their children are learning in cardboard boxes classrooms, who are learning writing on the floor, and they are enjoying $40,000 cars, $75,000 cars, and they don't want the $75 cars and $75,000 cars. They want 2 of them. It all comes down to accountability. There is nobody questioning them. Triple C, you promised that you are going to keep ZANU-PF in check. You are going to stop ZANU-PF from corruption, corrupt activities and so forth. What are you doing about it? You, ZANU-PF, you promised that you're going to be building this and doing that and doing that. What are you doing about it? That is what citizens ought to be doing. Pushing them to provide whatever they promised, provide more. That is how successful countries are being run. But no, we would rather go to South Africa for for medical care and leave our ministers of health to eat all the money back at home. It just shows that our level of thinking is so shallow. We cannot see, beyond our nose. If you cannot push and want more from your leaders and leadership, how then do you expect to have a democratic country? We might as well close shop and stick to what we have. Let our leaders and their family benefit, and we will be bodyguards at the door. And mind you, we are closing the door from the outside. We are not even part and parcel of the party inside. Shallowness, ignorance. That is the best description that we can give to some of our citizens.
So I'll revert back to the original comment, the barrage of responses on social media by those who believe that we should leave leaders like Nelson Chamisa alone. I repeat, that would be irresponsible. Leaders are accountable to the people, and we should hold them to account. And those supporters who still have the mentality, this personality cult mentality, that leaders are demigods, we should not be held to account. I feel sorry for them, because those are the very people who are being exploited. And I must say, we have landed us into this mess as a nation. Because as long as they continue to hold that mentality, all it means is leaders like Nelson Chamisa will call them to participate in flawed 2028 elections, give ZANU-PF legitimacy, and perpetuate the dictatorship. They, of course, suffer, but the whole nation suffers too. I've said on this platform that one of the cases of Zimbabwe is that we gave universal suffrage to people who really do not know how to exercise their vote, who do not understand that as much as their right to vote is respected, it comes with it the responsibility to understand that that vote has consequences. If the consequences of your blind loyalty to Chamisa means perpetuating this ZANU-PF dictatorship, then you are not being responsible to your fellow citizens. We have the most unfortunate reality that we have got people who have the vote and they don't understand how to exercise that right. We should educate them. The idea that we should allow those ruling elite, the sellouts in the opposition, the buffoons in the ruling party, to exploit the ignorance of the voters is unthinkable. We will educate the voters, but we will also hold those in positions of power and authority to account. Indeed, it is part of the education. The voters should know that Chamisa lied to them and conned them to participate in a flawed elections. And hopefully, if they learn that lesson, they will not fall victim of the same exploitation again. Think about it. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.